Hello, everyone. I would like to make a separate video to explain two questions in the practice midterm, part 1, version 2. Specifically, I would like to talk about the last two questions. So first of all, I would like to share my screen with you. All right. So firstly, I would like to talk about question 3. It's revenues and elasticity. So the question says, a few years ago, apple growers in the state of Washington produced an unusually large crop due to favorable weather conditions. However, the farmers complained that their income actually decreased as a result. And data confirmed this. How can it be that apple farmers' income decreased with the larger crop? Use a graph and discuss the elasticity of demand to make your point. So basically, you have to notice that when Q increases, P decreases, right? And income is equal to P times Q. So it's possible that P decreases more than the increase of Q. So that will lead to, a lower income. So using a graph, okay, so I'm giving you an example. Using a graph, you should see that when you move along a demand curve, okay, to the right, as quantity increases, price decreases. And then from this graph, you can see that the price decreases a lot while quantity increases, modest. And it's actually leading to, a lower P times Q, which is a lower revenue, or we would say income. So how to relate this to elasticity? I would like to bring back the midpoint formula for calculating the elasticity within a range. So we are moving from point A to point B, and then we would like to know the average elasticity between A and B. And to do that, because we know that from A to B, the elasticity is changing, right? So every point will give you a different elasticity, but we are interested in the average elasticity. So we use the midpoint formula, which is given by this, okay? It's, okay, quantity B minus quantity A divided by the middle point of the two quantities, divided by, the price of B minus the price of A divided by the middle point of the two prices. So the numerator is actually an approximate of the percentage change of quantity, while the denominator is an approximate of the percentage change of the price. And using the numbers I give you here, you can actually get the value, okay, which is actually negative 1/2, which is smaller than 1 in absolute value. So this is telling us that the demand curve is inelastic between A and B. So how to understand the relationship between elasticity and the change of revenues? So when elasticity is smaller than 1 in absolute value, it means that, okay, the percentage change of quantity is lower than the percentage change of the price in absolute value. So when you increase the quantity, okay, the price decreases, right? But the price decreases a lot more than the increase in quantity in percentage. Then, according to the formula of income, which is just P times Q, if the price decreases a lot in percentage, then your income should be lower, right? So if you want to use the notation that we use in class, we can just pick a point near point B, and then we use the formula of elasticity, okay? It's going to be the derivative of Q with respect to P times P over Q. And then we can kind of rearrange this formula to express that percentage change in Q divided by percentage change in P. And then if the percentage change in Q is lower than the percentage change in P in absolute value, then the elasticity is smaller than 1. And having the elasticity smaller than 1 means that the demand is inelastic. And when the demand is inelastic, okay, increasing the quantity will lead to a larger decrease in the price, which will lead to a lower income in total. Okay, so this is question 3. And for question 4, it's actually quite long, and some of you may get lost when you read these questions. You have to decompose, this question into 3 parts. So firstly, you need to notice that at the beginning, this question asks you, why would we expect a rational consumer who consumes positive quantities of 2 goods, X and Y, to equate the marginal rate of substitution between them with the relevant price ratio? So basically, this question is asking you to explain why the marginal rate of substitution between X and Y is equal to the price ratio of X and Y. So to answer this question actually gives you, several steps to take before you answer this final question. So we should really just focus on the later part of this question before answering the first part. So you have to do all the things that this question asks you to do. So in the process of answering this question, you should define the marginal rate of substitution both in words and mathematically. So to explain the marginal rate of substitution in words, okay, just go to the lecture recording and see how the professor defined it in words. And then mathematically, it's just the slope of the indifference curve. And actually, the professor took an absolute value. Okay, so in the textbook, it's the slope of the indifference curve, but the professor is focusing on the absolute value, okay, of the slope. The slope is negative, right? And if you add a negative sign, then it becomes positive. Then it's the absolute value of the slope. And we know that to get a slope, okay, because the vertical axis is y and the horizontal axis is x, so the slope is just dy over dx. And then if you add a negative sign, it's the absolute value of the slope. So that will be the mathematical definition. And then you should also explain in words what this is telling you. It's actually telling you that how much x you should sacrifice to get 1 more unit of y, okay? This might not be rigorous, so just check what the professor said in his recordings. So once you define the marginal rate of substitution, both in words and mathematically, now you have an expression, which is the MRS is equal to negative of dy over dx, right? So that will be the first thing that you need to do. And then the next thing that you need to do, okay, required by this question is then relate the mathematical expression to one obtained from the solution of the consumer's problem of maximizing utility subject to a budget constraint. So you need to write out the utility maximization, which we will talk about in week 3's TA session. So basically, once you write out a utility maximization problem, okay, in its general form, and then you can kind of write out the first order conditions. You can actually write out a Lagrangian first, and then take the derivative of the Lagrangian with respect to good x and good y, and of course lambda, and then you use the first two first order conditions to get this equation, which is, okay, u sub x over u sub y equals px over py. So the left-hand side is actually going to be equal to the marginal rate of substitution, while the right-hand side is going to be equal to the marginal rate of transformation. We will talk about that in week 3's TA session. So this is the second step that you need to do. And finally, you need to relate this mathematical expression, okay, to the previous one so that you can answer, okay, the question highlighted by the yellow background. So the last step is to use the implicit function theorem. So according to the implicit function theorem, okay, when you calculate the slope of the indifference curve, dy over dx, okay, for an indifference curve, it's actually fixing the utility function to a certain value, right? It's u of x and y equals a constant. And then now you can know that x and y are implicit functions of each other. And then we talk about how to get the relationship between these two, right? So dy over dx is going to be negative of u sub x over u sub y. But if we, and then we move the negative sign to the left-hand side, so you get this expression. So look at this. What is this? So negative dy over dx is the marginal rate of substitution. And then it's equal to u sub x over u sub y, which is the left-hand side of the previous equation. And then the right-hand side is the price ratio. So now we can equate the marginal rate of substitution to the price ratio. And finally, we answer this question. So to answer this question, you need to take 3 steps. The first is to give a mathematical and, you have to give a mathematical expression to define this marginal rate of substitution. And of course, you also have to explain it in words requested by this question. And the second step is to, write out a utility maximization problem and to get some first order conditions that will help you get, the relationship between the marginal utilities and the price ratio. And finally, you just relate the marginal rate of substitution to the ratio of marginal utilities. And finally, you can relate marginal rate of substitution to the price ratio. So that would be how you answer question 4. So hopefully this video can help you understand these 2 questions. And I'm not going to explain the first 2 questions because they are fairly standard and straightforward. But for these 2 questions, some of you might not have a clue of how to answer them and how to start, or whether you are missing some of the steps that are required to get a full credit. And that's why I want to explain these 2 questions to you. Okay, so that's all. Thank you for watching this video, and good luck with the preparation for the exam.